And I Love Her by the Beatles was originally released in 1964 on the album A Hard Day's Night. It was released as a 45-inch single alongside of If I Fell, which is another great Beatles ballad. And perhaps I will get the chance to talk about this song in more detail someday. It is credited as written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but history seems to show that the song was mostly written by McCartney with some help from John Lennon. But even this point is not without some controversy. In an interview with Playboy magazine, John Lennon has stated that his main contribution was the middle eight section, the part that goes, "Could never die, as long as I have you near me." But Paul McCartney has contradicted this, stating that John Lennon might have helped him with it, but that the middle eight section was his own creation as well. McCartney referred to And I Love Her as the first ballad that he impressed himself with, and John Lennon called it McCartney's first Yesterday. When I look at the individual components of And I Love Her by the Beatles and examine them from a purely critical standpoint, I find myself thinking that there is no reason I shouldn't dismiss this song as juvenile. And yet, And I Love Her remains for me one of the most beautiful love songs that I have ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Notice that I said experience rather than listen to, because And I Love Her is not a song that I just listen to. It is a song that even after all these years will stop me dead in my tracks and envelope me into its musical landscape. And I Love Her is probably one of the best examples I can find in popular music that less is more. It is also one of the best examples that I can find that demonstrates that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. As I take the song apart and examine it, it is a series of surprises and delights in simplicity. The song opens with a Spanish guitar lick performed by George Harrison. Now, while McCartney may contest John Lennon's claim to the song, he doesn't contest with George Harrison. Paul McCartney fully credits George Harrison with coming up with the opening signature guitar riff that opens and repeats through the song's running time of 2 minutes and 32 seconds. He states that it made a stunning difference to the song, and he is right. It would not be the same song without it, and much of the song's potential would never have been realized without it. So let's look at that opening riff. Within the context of the audio recording, it sounds like the ending note is different each time. But if you play it by itself, it's even more simplistic than it sounds. It's the exact same 4 notes played 4 times in a row. Played by itself, the opening guitar lick becomes quickly monotonous. But the guitar chord underneath it keeps changing between an F-sharp minor chord and an E6 chord. This gives the guitar lick the musical illusion that the closing note is changing each time, when in fact it's the chords underneath it that are actually changing. The chord change by itself is nothing. The guitar lick by itself becomes monotonous after more than 2 run-throughs. But together, these 4 opening measures are beautiful. Now, after the opening 4 measures, the song modulates between an F sharp to a C minor chord and closes with an A major to B major chord. This is obvious. What is not so obvious during the passage is what McCartney is playing underneath the modulating chords of F sharp minor to C sharp minor. Most bass players would just simply rhythmically play the root note of whatever chord the guitarist is playing. Now, if you don't know what playing the root note of the chord means, simply put, if the guitar player is playing an A major chord, then the bass player plays an A note underneath it. But McCartney doesn't do this, nor does he play it rhythmically. Instead, he plays what most guitarists would call broken chords. He plays a fifth, or an F sharp and C sharp under the F sharp minor chord, and a C sharp and G sharp notes in unison under the C minor chord. And he just lets it ring out. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not difficult to play, but very few bass players, in my opinion, would think to do this. This adds an incredibly dark texture to the song that is very understated and is more felt than heard. But listen to the recording carefully and you will hear it. This holding of these two-note chords on the bass is incredibly simplistic, but also incredibly effective. When the verse moves to the A and B chords, he does, however, break out into a melodic bass line. I can't be 100% accurate that what I'm playing is dead on, but this is a rough approximation. This leads us back to the Spanish classical riff of the introduction and into the second verse. Now, aside from the fact that we have a new set of lyrics, and stay with me because I will be getting to the lyrics soon, the second verse is played exactly the same as the first verse, but with one little musical difference. George Harrison plays a very simple arpeggio melody that wasn't there in the first verse. This would be under the lines of, "She gives me everything and tenderly, the kiss my lover brings, she brings to me." This melody is so simplistic that I would use it as an exercise to teach beginning guitarists how to play an arpeggio. By itself, it is incredibly simplistic, but combined with the rest of the song's arrangement, it becomes, again, incredibly effective in conveying a mood. Now, before I go beyond the second verse and into the song's bridge, I want to stop and point out one more musical texture. From the song's opening, Ringo is playing rhythm on bongos. It's a simple rhythm, but he's playing an even more simplistic rhythm on an instrument called claves. A clave is a percussion instrument. It's two little sticks. And I'm going to try my best here to approximate that rhythm. He plays this throughout the entire song. These claves are heavily reverbed in the mix, so they sound as if played deep within a cavern. It creates this very hypnotic effect on the listener, and I can't stress the importance on this one little texture. This hypnotic, cavernous feel creates a sense of memories, memories echoing through time and infinity, and this complements the entire theme of the song that is being communicated through the lyrics, which is a theme of love everlasting, or a love that is infinite through time. Played by itself, there is nothing all that remarkable about this rhythmic texture, but when added to the whole, it becomes downright cosmic. And now I want to get to the lyrics. I give her all my love, that's all I do. And if you saw my love, you'd love her too. And I love her. Bright are the stars that shine, dark is the sky. I know this love of mine will never die. And I love her. Now, if I take these lyrics objectively, with no real foreknowledge of the musical arrangement surrounding the song, I would probably interpret them as being the writings of a junior high school kid. But when combined with everything else, when combined with George Harrison's Spanish guitar lick, his guitar arpeggios, Paul's deep droning bass, Ringo's bongos, John Lennon's syncopated strumming, and also when I think of the beautiful melody sung with an absolute unabashed level of sincerity by Paul McCartney, the lyrics become a revelation of love and innocence, the perfect kind of storybook love that seems to only exist in folklore and fairy tales. Now, at this point, you might think that I have said enough, but there are still a few more bits of understated genius in this song that I should cover. First, there is the chord progression on the middle eight section, or the bridge section of the song. It starts with once again, the C sharp minor with the G sharp in the bass. A love like ours. It goes to a B major. Now it feels like for the next line, it should go back, should never die. And then it feels like it should do it again. As long as I have you near me. It resolves on a B7. But that's not what it does, actually. The song goes from a love like ours to the B, but then goes could never die. It goes to a G minor. As long as I have you near me. Now it goes to the B, and then to it resolving on the B7th. Like that. And while it could have worked the other way, and that would have been the simpler way, and that feels just kind of, just with basic songwriting structure, how you should have gone, the fact that they changed it the second time to the G minor makes the resolve here on that B to the B7 so much more satisfying. The guitar solo comes in, and then it changes keys. It's, once again, you don't notice it because we're going into the guitar solo. It seems it's just tremendously seamless. It goes, right there, the guitar solo just mimics, for the most part, there's some variations, but it largely mimics the vocal line. But what you don't realize is that it's now moved up a half step to G minor. And when we come out of that solo into the third verse, I should say the fourth verse, where we repeat the third verse again, bright are the stars that shine, we're now singing it in the higher key. And bringing it up that half step seems to just give it just that much more of a sense of longing that it didn't have the first time. I mean, it kind of already had that longing the first time, but now it's been elevated a little bit just by bringing the key up a half step. Once again, very subtle, and I don't even think it was intentional. It's just part of the brilliance of the simplicity of it. Finally, we get to the ending where once again we start where we began. Once again, we're just a half step higher. We're now in the key of F major. So just like how on the beginning we started out with the F sharp minor to an E. Now we're just going G sharp minor to an F. Now, most songwriting, would have you end, once again, whatever key you're in, that's the chord you ended, the one chord. So the idea would be that I think most songwriters would have done this. They would have just ended the song with like that. We are now in the key of F major during the last half of that song, and we would end there. And that's what most songwriters would have done. The Beatles don't do this, though. They actually end on the D chord, like that, which is amazing. And the D major chord shows up nowhere else in the song. It just suddenly ends it. This is instead the sixth chord in the key scale. And so we're going do 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 do. It's amazing because that shouldn't work theoretically speaking. But then music theory, I've always said, is just a set of rules for something that has no rules. It's important to understand them, but don't be enslaved by them. And since the Beatles didn't understand music theory, they weren't enslaved by it. So they just went where they felt it sounded good, and they went to this D chord, which is the sixth chord, which, once again, when you think about it theoretically, well, that shouldn't feel like it resolves. It should feel like it's waiting to resolve. But somehow, magically, it does feel like it resolves. It's beautiful and brilliant. And I Love Her was written and recorded during what some might refer to as a more innocent time, and so therefore the song reflects that time period. But this is a false assumption. I don't think any period in history is more innocent than any other one, once you stop looking at the past through the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia. A good example is whenever anyone in American politics says, "Let's make America great again." They are looking at the world through rose-colored glasses and are filtering out reality. Like Billy Joel said, "We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world was turning." And I Love Her is an amazing pinnacle of the beauty and innocence of love songs that had mostly dominated popular music prior to its release. But 1 year later, the Rolling Stones would release their angry anthem, Satisfaction, and the world of popular music would never be the same. And I Love Her doesn't so much reflect the time it was written in, as it does reflect a timeless sense of youthful innocence, and therefore a timeless sense of eternal love. This is TJR, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like them, please subscribe to the channel, and please share this video with your friends on social media. Thanks so much for watching.